Time being just a little after 5, 6 members present, we have a quorum. So we'll call the meeting to order. This is Thursday, April 28th, 2022, the standard monthly meeting of the Water Authority. Public input is first, and I see there's no one from the public. So we'll move right to minutes and entertain a motion to approve the board meeting of March 24th.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
What do you want?
The amended agenda. So we have a special board meeting as well.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So that was the 24th, correct?
Right, that's the 24th. The next one is the special board meeting of March 17th. That's the one in which we moved to set everything up to do the bonding.
Move to approve.
Moved, seconded,
I will second it.
seconded. Any comments, questions? Since that worked out very well, I guess it's okay. We're safe in approving that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is done. The Executive Director's report.
Good evening, everybody. Report for April 28th, 2022. For the Plunkett Pipeline Project, Phase 1, we are very close to activation. The pipeline was successfully cleaned and disinfected, and all of our water samples came back looking spectacular. So it's only a matter of maybe a couple weeks, Mike?
Hopefully in the next less than a week, we're flowing water this way. So right now it's just coordinating some paperwork from the lab, and then we'll share that with the city and do some final little piping connections compared to the whole project, and
Great.
we'll be moving water this way.
It's really good to have that connection in place for everybody for a number of reasons. So, Mike and Dave and the guys did a great job and all that sampling effort. So I just want to give kudos to them for that work. Phase 2, continue to work through the drawings. We looked at it. There were a number of conflicts particularly on one of the city streets, and so at this point, Beta is actually looking at a minor route change. I don't say minor, but it does involve going over the railroad rather than under the railroad. So they're putting together some conceptual drawings and engaging the railroad on the possibility of doing that on Pawtucket Avenue. And there's some minor route changes too with respect to some easements and where the pipeline crosses under 195. Beta had identified this manufacturing plant, which was off of Waterman Avenue in East Providence, which was vacant for a long, long time. I don't know if it's the former Spidell plant or something, but almost for as long as I was there was nobody there. Well, and so it looked like a good, nice big empty parking lot for us to put the pits there, the receiving pits. Well, about, I would say maybe like 6 months ago, that property is now being changed hands and being bought, and there's going to be some significant activity with employees. Good for East Providence, bad for our project. But they still seem receptive, provided that we don't interfere too much with the parking area. And also there's a side street called Fairmount Avenue, which we were proposing to go down, but that's the main egress and entranceway to this plant. So it required us to engage an additional property owner, which is adjacent, you know, to this other property as an alternate route. And Mike reached out to them, and they seemed receptive to the idea of having a pipeline there. So that's good news for that project. Well, but we continue to push Beta to move this along. I mean, that really seems to be the critical piece of trying to get this design, you know, to the point where we can start submitting them to the regulatory agencies for them to do their reviews. East Providence Partnership, not too much. I only put, I know I mentioned it last meeting, but I wanted to memorialize it in this report because that meeting was the date of the board meeting, so I didn't have a chance to put it in my reports. But I also attached the product fact sheet that I put together, and that was also submitted to, you know, those offices. And I mean, I think it's important to note that it's kind of the first kind of Tucket Pipeline Phase 2 project where it kind of showed the first BCWA/EP project. So.
Right, no, it's very good, very good.
The plan for the demo of the water treatment plant, you know, as you were aware, at the last meeting, that night of our last meeting, there was a talk that was being held at the Rhode Island Historic Preservation Commission at a art gallery here in Warren, talking about the Warren Waterworks. I did go. I was on the fence pretty much at the time I walked up to the building, but I did go. And it was very well attended, I must say. And John also showed up. So it was good that John showed up. And there were a couple of other council people there. The presentation was actually pretty good. He was very knowledgeable. He spent a lot of time not just talking about the history of the Warren Waterworks, but kind of the Waterworks and Rhode Island as a whole. And he spoke about some of the, you know, the architecture of some of the buildings that were built by Providence and Tucket, and even East Providence. And granted, some of the architectural buildings of the pump stations were pretty grand back in the day, built in the early 1900s. You know, I don't think this one's so much. But I guess beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. But I was introduced at that meeting. There were the folks that were there were actually happy and pleased that I did attend.
Good.
I was asked, you know, what my opinion was of those buildings, and I told them I really didn't have any. I said, but I gave them our position and what we were doing. We going through the process and, you know, putting together historical documentation as required by the State Historic Preservation Commission. And, you know, frankly, that as a business decision, it makes no sense for us to continue to invest ratepayer dollars in obsolete infrastructure, and they all seem to understand that. He did ask, you know, well, would Bristol County Water entertain the idea if someone did come to the authority, you know, with an idea, with funding to repurpose those buildings? And I can hear John behind me saying, yes. So I did say, you know, I said, I'm sure the authority would entertain something like that. And then I also invited him to take a tour, which he did about a couple weeks later. He was pretty impressed. Mike can attest. He likes to talk. He talks a lot about the whole, you know, waterworks industry and how the history, and he seems into it. But in the end, at the end of the tour, he did come up to me and he said, "You know, Steve," he said, "I wish I had come here first." He's like, "I completely understand. I completely understand where you're coming from, and there will be a significant challenge to repurpose these buildings."
Right.
You gotta go inside to see what's going on.
So, I think that's the end of it.
And I haven't heard from him since. We also had two Warren council members attend, Kerry Cronin and Brett Eckert, and they seem very interested in the buildings. I don't know what I mean, they thought they were impressed. That's all I can say.
Does that building include the garage that is attached to it, or just the original part? I mean, if we were to say, yeah, you want this, you take it, you fix it, we would then still destroy the garage, I presume, ultimately.
I don't know what interest they would have in anything. I don't know.
Okay. But wasn't that something that was added a lot later on?
Yeah. So we're going through the process, and we have a draft of that report. We're just fine tuning the language that's going to be going to the State Historic Preservation Commission. I don't think, other than that they receive this and kind of bless it and say thank you and put it in the archives, I don't think they have any other kind of approval or disapproval for us moving forward. And then we could put together the plans and specs for the demolition plan. And in speaking with Mike, we think it makes sense initially to do this in a phased approach anyways, and first demo the structures behind the buildings, the tankage, all the tanks and the piping and all that, and see what we have. And that way we can also then free up space for us then to move some items that we have within the garage into maybe some storage areas. And then maybe also if they see the tanks going, maybe there'll be some interest to do something with the buildings, and maybe not, or they'll see that we're actually serious, that we're moving forward.
I mean, I certainly, just speaking for myself alone, would not want to deny Warren or this agency the opportunity if they came up with the money and wanted to do something with it. I'm sure we could work out something. I wouldn't want to say, cut it off, you can't have it. But based on what I and some others were saying, my God, what would they do with a building like this?
Yeah.
Is there a way to access it, and is there parking other than using our property?
That would be an issue, because that's another thing. I mean, whoever does, if someone does happen to want those buildings, it has to be knowing that we still have an active operation right behind it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad.
So that's it was an interesting few weeks regarding
glad they looked at
those structures. So. The dam removal project has been, we finally did receive the comments, like I said last meeting, and we submitted our responsive comments. Still nothing from U.S. Army Corps or CRMC. I've asked our consultants to try and nudge these agencies to see where they're at. Meter replacements, we continue to make appointments, over 97% change outs. And you will see further into the agenda, we did develop a plan of action for tackling the remainder of these meters. Water purchases, I got the charts and the graphs included. Kind of typical for this time of year, and maybe a little bit above the 5-year average for this month of March. I started working on the annual report along with our public relations consultant, RDW. So we'll be getting that information to them. And the report will probably be put together sometime in June, I would think. We've started a hydrant flushing and using all available media, notifying the local areas when we're doing flushing, and that's been going well. We had a number of employees attend the New England Waterworks Spring Conference, which was held in person, first time in a couple of years. Say Mike Crawford and Paul Smith gave a very well-received presentation on the slip lining of our East Bay pipeline. And our employees attended some workshops and a number of the vendor exhibits. It was a very well-attended event. And we also had the opportunity to cheer on again our winning Hydrogen Hysteria team. Once again, took home the trophy.
You have to retire that day.
But the best is that these guys get a free trip, right?
So, yeah, so these guys, the New England Waterworks actually pays for their flight and hotel expenses to compete in San Antonio for the national competition. It's a pretty big deal, so good for them. Like I said, we had like 7 or 8 of us there, really, cheering them on, and it's a little different. I mean, they're competing with 2 other teams, right beside them. So I was telling Alan earlier, their time this year was a little higher than last year, where last year it was just they were doing it in the garage with a video camera with no pressure. But when you have like all eyes on you and you have 2 other teams, and it was pretty close. It came down to seconds, really, with the other squads too. So good for them. They did a great job. Okay, that's my report. And Mike, anything to add? I know you got the Hope Street pump station going up.
It's going up, it's getting bigger and bigger over the past few weeks with the roof going on. Unfortunately, not a lot of mechanical improvements over the next month or so. Those are still long lead items. The guts, so to speak, of the station won't be coming in until later in the summer. So over the next month, mostly just building envelope. You'll see the roofing go on. Then we'll start padding on the walls, getting the finishes on. Hopefully the doors and windows come in right around that time, and we'll get all weatherproofed. We're hoping, as of right now, the supply chain doesn't look like it's going to negatively impact the schedule, but it's something we're staying on top of and trying to track those long lead items to ensure that we can keep this project going. So,
Can I ask that we suggest that we get a hold of Bristol PD and the fire department and have another go around, even maybe on site, to look at it and say this is where your stuff is going to go and so on and so forth.
yeah, absolutely.
I think that because I get hit, it's a good place for a cop to hide. Not that I didn't mean it that way. I mean, it's a good place, but I mean they're very much aware of what their shortcoming is, communications wise there, and they look at that and they say when are we going to go? So I did speak with the lieutenant this week, and I told him I'd give him a call back after this meeting, but I would like to see if we could get together with another thing, possibly to meet there, because where are they going to land that cabinet or whatever it is? I'm unsure of what they're going to do. I thought it was going to be a rack.
Yes, they're going to be providing all the equipment, but I actually have the electrician scheduled to do a walkthrough just with our folks on all the building penetrations before we kind of do the finishes, just in case we have to move something. So it would probably be a good time, so we can coordinate it right around that.
I'd really like to see that. Thank you.
Otherwise, so we're going to start seeing some action this summer, kind of pre-dam removal work that the DOT is doing. So right now, if you go up this way, still some of the paving activity you're seeing, but come July, we'll start seeing the culvert aspect of that project commence, and we'll coordinate with them as it impacts our operations and the water quality sampling we normally do with URI that we've started since the design of the dam removal projects have kind of kicked off. And that's it. And the transmission, that was a big undertaking for our contractor and our guys. We did the entire 2 miles in one disinfection. So we had some constraints built in there to try to mitigate any negative impacts. And fortunately, all the QA/QC we did ahead of time, and all the meetings and everything, it all worked out, and we got the pipeline disinfected in one shot. So really happy about that. Can't wait to move forward and start having water coming this way. So.
Michael, a question. With regard to the demolition, of the dams, removal of the dams, assuming that project's going to move forward, is there any thought to connecting with Roger Williams, that this may become something that one of the professors would follow with his class? Or is it some student interest in this, that they could learn something in the process if they associate themselves as this thing moves forward?
Potentially, because
not to get in the way, but to use it as a perfect example of a conservation issue, returning to nature, and so on, that they could make a teaching moment out of it over a period of time.
Yes, so that was part of the impetus for the sampling we're doing with URI and the Watershed Watch program, because we start to look around and people say, let's remove the dams, let's restore it to what it was. Well, what are the tangible benefits? And there's not a lot of pre and post water quality. How does it impact? There are a lot of other external factors. Water can enter downstream and you can have negative impacts from that. But we do intend to continue this sampling through the project and track how things trend. It won't be a comprehensive to identify the impacts of drought and stormwater discharges and things like that, but it should shed some light. And Wenley from Save the Bay is very well ingrained into that community and has been in touch with specifically URI to gain their interest.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yep. Susan's been very busy trying to kick off our renewal projects.
Yep, nothing goes according to plan. So just one step back, our 2021 project, as you know, did not get finished in 2021, so Deambra is continuing with work on Metacom Ave, as well as an underground vault getting installed on Michael Drive. That is ongoing, seems to be progressing okay. It's just that it obviously should have been, we were hoping it would have been done last year, but they'll finish up in that section of Metacom Ave. They'll finish paving that area, and then later on in the summer, we'll be doing curb-to-curb paving of both sections on Metacom Ave in conjunction with the DOT. No big problems on that, just moving forward. The project that we are hoping to begin this year, 2022, we hired Boyle and Fogarty to do the project. They are having some lead item issues with some of their materials, but also a bigger bump in the road was permits that we need from the DOT. One of the project sites is on Wampanoag Trail over in Barrington, the curve that's right at Old County Road, and that requires a DOT permit. And unbeknownst to us, the state had moved up the paving of the Wampanoag Trail to this summer. It was originally scheduled for 2025. So we thought we were doing well to get in a few years before the project, but instead we'll be a day before the project, if we're lucky. So they are working with us to expedite our permit and to coordinate us with the paver doing the Wampanoag Trail paving. But if you've been on the trail, you can see that they've already started putting out all of their equipment and erosion control for the paving project. So we are still thinking positively that we will get our project finished. It's a water main that's AC. It's an AC pipe that we are going to use the fire hose pipe inside of it to reinforce that pipe. If we don't do it before they pave that road, there's a possibility that paving the road will cause that main to then experience breaks. So That would be obviously the worst case scenario. But we're hoping, today I was working on resubmitting our permits, and hopefully the DOT will work with us on that and slow up the paving enough for us to get in there. We also need a DOT permit for the bike path at the bottom of Aaron Ave in Bristol. We're working to get that one finalized. So we're still in our preliminary phases, the contractor's submitting shop drawings and doing all the preliminary work to get that project going. But I would say, aside from the Wampanoag Trail, the project probably won't get started till later on in the summer.
I was asked by the town manager of Barrington to explain the projects to the town council. So I got large charts, and the more I talked with Sue about this and the problem she was having with the contractor, why don't you do the north lane first instead of the south lane, whatever. So Joe came through, gave us a resolution. Steve, Joe, and so we're going to have turn in a resolution to the town. Next Monday is their meeting, and so I'm hoping they'll pass a resolution supporting this and requesting cooperation, buy a little time, cooperation from DOT, so that we get this project done. So just another little piece that we can add to the
and we did send out email information to all the DPW and town managers, just to alert them in all 3 towns, as well as a mailer went to everyone near the Wampanoag Trail, the residents, letting them know that the project was going to happen in their neighborhood. So that project will require bypass piping. So there is a little interaction with the customers to get all their houses hooked up to that. So that should be starting in the next couple of weeks. And that's it.
Thank you, Sue.
Next item is the financial report. Oh no, I'm sorry, we have Randy's report.
Yeah, Randy has nothing. Let's see. Yeah, we're upgrading all the security systems with Cox, with facilities, and he's also doing a backup, working on a backup server. And he also changed our website hosting, which he feels it's a better company that's for hosting. So those are some highlights of his report.
Any questions, comments? Okay, financial report.
Okay, March is pretty easy, I guess. I don't usually talk about the balance sheet, but that this month, if you want to take a look at it or whatever, there is a significant change because we were able to close on the bonds last third week or so of March, so you'll see another $12 million in liabilities and some additional cash in there. So normally I don't talk about the balance sheet too much, but there was a pretty significant change for March 2022. March, it's only 1 month worth of information, so we don't, so whether it's cumulative a month, it's going to be kind of skewed. So revenue's down a little bit versus about 9% versus March 21. Looks like it's mostly timing. Consumption was a little bit lower too, but it's probably mostly timing. The expenses were also a little bit higher than last March as well. Again, it could be timing. There's nothing. I mean, 3%, spread out amongst all those expenses. There's nothing that really jumped out as being, weird or odd that would cause it. So nothing really to report on that. For the budget versus actual, revenue was under budget by like almost 70%. And I almost had a heart attack when I first saw that. Then I went back and looked at last year. March kind of does look like it has a weird, because it's 1 month. And I think I might have made it a little bit worse because in my effort to try to level off and make the monthly budgets maybe a little more realistic, when I spread it out on the budget by month, I didn't do like divided by 12 or anything, and I don't remember what Mark did, but I looked at the prior 4 years, I took an average, and I tried to average it out that way, and honestly the average for March over the previous 4 years was probably higher than what actually came in, so that might have exacerbated that revenue being under budget a little bit. So hopefully that'll start leveling off. And expenses were under budget, pretty much consistent with where we see it, 9.4%. So that was pretty much what I expected anyways. The dollar bill, the gallon bill, those are on page 6 through 8 with the graphs. The dollar bill is up about a little over 3%, and the gallons delivered was down about almost 1.5%, a little over 1.5%, and then all that makes sense when you think about, we did a 4% rate increase in March, granted some of that doesn't hit till like 1 May, but pretty much again what was expected. The trust fund report for page 9, the debt service ratio for March is 7.41. That was up a little bit from February. And that's probably, the one I do here, and then Mark always did, is a little bit probably more conservative than what I ended up doing for the audit. So it's probably a little bit lower than what it comes up in, and what I did for the audit, it came out in that 7 range. So pretty confident with that.
1.25 is all that's required.
Right, exactly. So I'm not, whether it's 7.4 or 7.9 or 6.5, we're way over. The pension summary on page 10, slight increase from March. Anybody who pays attention to March, it's a little bit better, but overall it's still down for the year due to the downturn. And as of the end of March, it was just under 4 million. So that's really it for March. The only other thing I'll just mention is the auditors came on Monday and they left on Tuesday. So the audit is done.
Wow.
They came in with, I think, half the office on Monday. People kept asking questions. I didn't know who it was, so I just come in and said, whoever asked for this. I think they had 4 or 5 on Tuesday, and they were done, so I could have like a draft pretty much by next week. Went smooth. I didn't get any complaints. Joe noticed they answered the question. They never came back for follow-up, so it went very smooth, and they can send half the offices. They got to be done in 2 days.
I came through here on Tuesday to meet with Sue, and there's a whole crowd in here.
Yep. So, all set.
That's good. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Moving along. Okay, award of the annual permanent paving contract. If anybody has any questions about this, we should really put the motion first, entertain a motion to award the annual permanent paving contract for FY 2023 to International Paving Corporation for $158,600.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any questions, comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any negative? No, it's unanimous. The next one is the annual maintenance and service work contract. And again, this where the recommendation is that it be awarded to JML Excavation in the amount of $203,685.
So moved. Second.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It is done. Any negative? Okay, all set. Chris, I'm assuming you grunted.
Yes, it.
Okay, okay.
Just for note, I mean, these contracts are, it doesn't mean that we're going to be expending 203,685. It's really kind of only on a kind of as needed basis.
Right. Yeah, we probably should add that as a notation. But they're estimated amount,
We have to come up with some type
Billed
of
as
estimated
needed.
quantities for contractors to bid on them, but they understand it's only, it's not like identified projects that we have for them. They're basically for maybe a certain break or something that we have that we can't handle in-house, or if we require some type of assistance from them.
violent over here.
Is it your watch?
Next one is the award to automatic temperature controls for 16604. That's to repair or replace HVAC systems in this building.
Motion to be accepted.
And that's with a 20% contingency for not to exceed 19,925.
Motion to accept.
Good. Any comments, questions? All set. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is done. Thank you. The next one is this goes to PAR for an estimated 107 hours, which would be up to $17,640. Do we really have to add 24 cents?
Precision.
Precision, okay.
They're engineers.
Yeah, just gonna say that. Be dealing with engineers.
And so if we make that a not to exceed and the price comes in 1 penny higher, we don't pay the bill.
Giving them a quarter.
24, okay, the 24 cents is in there. Who's gonna make that motion?
Vote to approve.
Second.
To approve, a second. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And it is done, thank you. Modification to security policy. Okay, the committee can make their comments to us.
Okay, I believe what we came up with, Bob and Tom, correct me if I get it wrong. The customer average residential quarterly bill is approximately $166.15. We added it, here we are. We are recommending the security deposit for residential customers be increased from $120 to $165. What the committee decided is to approve this effective, take effective May 1st? May 1st, yeah. Okay, and that when the rate increase of 2023 takes effect by whatever amount that is, this security deposit amount will also increase by that. Is that correct?
The increase in the security deposit will equal by formula the amount of the increase that each year, and that would be a follow-on every following year.
Right.
So
That'll-
whatever way the increase is, it would be reflected in the security deposit.
I think Steve noticed, and Joe as well, that the last time we had an increase was 2008.
Right.
So this will make sure that doesn't happen again. It'll flow. If there's no rate increase, it stays the same.
Correct.
Goes down. So, I can make a motion.
Let me ask,
Another piece.
Any questions?
I'm assuming this is for new accounts only.
Correct, prospectively.
Yeah, that's implied, it doesn't quite say that.
Oh, okay.
It's prospectively. And also there's the commercial deposit piece as well.
Correct. Okay. Also, 200% of the residential deposit amount, we are recommending that the commercial security deposit be decreased from $360 to $330. And that'll stay the same until further review of the commercial, or no?
Yes. Yeah, that'll stay the same for this year, and then next year, it'll be based again on the average residential bill times 2.
Okay.
Everybody understand that? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We don't need a hand motion on this. It's not going to be that much money anyway, is it? No, I don't think so. All right, it's passed.
Thank you, Bob. Tom?
Did a great job.
Thank you.
Master change out plan of action. Okay.
So we're getting down to close to the end, right? I mean, we continue to make appointments, but we are at a point, and Joe has these, the meters and the accounts itemized as to, ones that customers have responded, those meters located in the pits. So we'll continue to make appointments, but if folks don't respond, Joe's going to start sending out letters, you know, be threatening shut-offs. You will give folks that have, you know, maybe the meters that are behind walls some additional time to provide us access. And then we have the folks, and this should really say, with the number 3 here, that don't want a radio transmitter as a perceived health issue. It's not really a health issue.
A couple of years ago, there was a family that was very high on this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the people who don't want it, they feel very strongly about it. And I know that, I guess, well, I was told that the board in the past has approved a policy of having pits put in with the customers paying for the installation of those. I'm not quite sure how we'll get there. If they don't want the radio, and then we offer the pit, and the pit is going to cost $2,000, how would we even collect that?
Up front. I think they would need to pay for the installation.
Right, but what if they don't agree to that?
I mean, what do we do then? Shut the water off? And if they have a person who has a health issue, then the health department won't let you do it, right?
Right, and then at that point, is it worth all that? You know, I don't know. For 8 accounts.
What's the negative effect of leaving a few mountain liars like that who aren't part of the automated system?
They're paying their bills.
Right, right.
Yeah, leave them alone.
Well, will there be an estimated value?
No. We're getting a read.
So you're sending someone into the house
Yes.
and reading the meter once a month?
Correct. It's an additional effort on our part. That's the added cost.
And it's also an old meter, and so it's going slower and slower and slower, not faster and faster. So we're losing money no matter how you slice it.
Not big dollars, but yes, that is true. Yeah.
Like 0.5% a year or something like that?
Possible.
So if it hadn't been changed in 15 years, you know.
Will you charge them a premium?
Well, I mean, you know, unless you can look up when was your meter originally installed, and you can calculate on an average basis, because that's what I understand Neptune tells you. Hold on, tell you, it loses time, it loses its accuracy, it slows down over the years.
Do we even have a meter reader fee?
No. But we could implement one.
Or some,
You know, maybe that's a way to do it. I don't know.
Probably wouldn't cover your cost in the labor per se, but you'd probably make up for that 0.5% you've been losing.
I just seem to recall there was quite an issue that the one family made, and I don't recall how it ended up.
I think they moved down the system, so it resolved itself.
Okay.
well, that's it too. I mean, you know, we can out, you know, eventually some of these folks may move on.
Most of these 9 issues, I believe, will eventually resolve themselves. Just time, you need time.
I guess they had someone in the family who had cancer or some issue, but when we investigated, it turned out that the radiation from our unit was far less than stuff going on in their house already. So.
You're assuming a rational world, Alan, which isn't valid anymore.
Must be Trumpers.
Whoa! Jeez! Look at you! Fire away! Stop it! It's out of line for this meeting. Yeah, it's out of line.
If we're doing it in person, how often do we have someone go and actually read the thing?
Is that a quarterly read?
So is that a quarterly read?
Yeah.
Yes, all of these are quarterlies. They're all residential. Yeah.
You know, thinking if we made it, say, once a year and had a much bigger security deposit for these accounts, a way of, you know, making it workable for them and no cost to us. Or
Most of these are property owners. They're not,
Okay,
yeah.
not gonna skip out of the bill.
If you solve all the rest of it except for the 8, we'll call that a win.
99.5%.
There you go.
I think we can accept.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to accept this memo, or as it is, we just?
That's fine. Motion made. Is there-
No, you need a motion to adopt the policy.
Yeah. And they just made that. We need a second.
Second.
Okay.
Is a policy, it says plan of action, I'm not sure it really.
It's really a plan of action, that's all it is.
It's not clear that there is a policy in there.
Well, we can still say accept the plan of action.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Let's vote on it.
Yeah, all right, well, we got a motion on the floor
I
to
second.
accept the plan of action. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it is done.
This is over. I don't know what we run it.
Okay, next is the GIS presentation.
Okay, so just a little precursor to this. So I had put this on the agenda really for kind of, I think kind of like show and tell for the board, but also to show, the good work that our GIS analyst was doing, and how much she had brought up our GIS and now the uses and how it helps us as an organization for planning purposes, and we also do our design work, and it's something that customers can actually kind of go on our website and take a look at. I don't know if I scared her too much because she put in her resignation 3 days ago.
Oh, my goodness. I need to sit there.
Friendly guy you are.
Maybe you can put together a power presentation.
So Mike's filling in.
So forgive me, but I'll try to get through this as best as I can. That Laura, who is our current and soon-to-be former GIS analyst, put this together, and it does highlight all the great work she's done over the past seven years she's been with us. So she's really taken us from the really infantile stages of GIS to where we are today, to a lot of the stuff that everybody sees, both internally and out in the public. So we'll start with some background, just like what is GIS? We hear it, we see it, and a lot of times we don't know the complexity of it. So it's geographic information systems. We refer to them as maps, but there's a lot kind of ingrained in those maps, and it really boils down to merging data sources and representing them through the spatial aspects of those data sources. So this is kind of what we refer to in GIS as a lot of layers. So we call those layers, but essentially they're independent data sources. And then we can layer them on a map, and then we can make relationships, we can analyze, we can do a lot with them by incorporating all those data sources and seeing how they all interact. And the spatial is what ties them all together. So why is it important to us as a water utility? I mean, it's very important. So this is an advertisement from Esri. So Esri is the kind of the standard as in the software solution for GIS applications. And what it does is allow us to consume a lot of different data and utilize it for a lot of these different applications. And this is where we are and a lot of the things we're trying to achieve. So what we'll go through quickly is some of the current things we use as far as cataloging our data, the sources we're using. some of the analysis that we have done, and then some of the aspects of where we want to take this, and we can kind of walk through those. But here we have just a little graphical representation of what GIS can do and how it fits in. And the top of that little diagram there is kind of the inputs in, is what GIS can consume. And then we take it into the light blue, where we take that data and what it can produce for us, and what it can also serve. The hydraulic model being one of them. It is the backbone for that system as well. So Elements. I don't know if anyone's heard Elements before, but Elements is essentially our maintenance monitoring software. So can you have one maintenance monitoring software without GIS? Yes, but what GIS does is allow us to take that work and do it on a spatial feature. So that allows us to assign work to what we call them assets here. We can assign work to a specific asset, and then that gets held within that asset, and we can catalog that history. And that history is assigned to that specific asset as it sits in a particular location. And that has a lot to do with the GIS, because otherwise you're doing work and it's just work in the system. It's another, say, we're fixing a valve, but it doesn't have that spatial aspect to it. So we can't say, well, is it influenced by something else? So that is what our inventory of assets would look like graphically.
What are those little circles? The colored circles stand for?
That is how we're representing our, I'll jump to it right now. So those green circles are all of our accounts. So that is the data source of our utility billing software coming into our GIS platform. So we can see on the left-hand side here a little pop-up menu. That pop-up menu is all the different attributes that exist in that external data source. So we're representing them here as attributes. I'll jump back to, now that's a service line. Those are all the different attributes we assign to that feature so that we can, one, categorize it, and then two, track it and change it as we improve it, work on it, all the times we essentially touch it. So that exists for our service lines, for those, for our accounts, for our water main. And again, we have all the different attributes ranging from size, the materials of construction, date of installation, and then we have, on this one in particular, we have other attributes that don't have values, lining type and lining date, and that's because we haven't done that work. So once we do a rehabilitation project, we would then populate more of those attributes into those assets.
With the populating of a task being completed, is that done in the field with those iPads or whatever?
Yes, yes.
So that goes automatically into the GIS and updates your whole system?
Yes, and this is what it looks like. So if this was live, this is this asset right here. This is Coggeshall Ave, and here is the history of Coggeshall Ave of work. All the work we did to that one particular asset. So we did a mainline repair. When the guys are out there, they physically do the work, but they also capture it historically through a work order that's done electronically out in the field. We assign all the associated paperwork to it. They take pictures of it, and it all lives in this software, and it's attached to that asset. So we can see the work that was done not only on a water main, but this particular water main, again, in that particular location, which does carry a lot of weight when you go to that future analysis. So data analysis is the big output of this. But unfortunately, like any good system, you have to get data into it, and that takes time. So a lot of the work since the authority moved to Elements, a few years ago, has been building that data repository. And now we're getting to somewhere where we can start to really start doing some analysis. And this is just kind of a rudimentary analysis. We're representing in a map here all of our water mains by material. So here we had, Laura was able to break them down by percentages. Then we can represent them by size. We have all the different sizes and their percentage throughout the system. And then we also want to lump in the work orders to touch on that asset management perspective, where we can then capture the work, but again, we can capture it spatially. So we're not only looking at main breaks that we did, in this map is represented from 2020 on, but we can also see where they are. And that is a huge component when it comes to the analysis and troubleshooting. So this is, we're taking it a step further. We're looking at main breaks, and then also represented by the material of construction of the pipe. And then where are we doing something wrong? Where are the clusters of really bad things? So we can do that, again, in GIS. We can identify some hot spots, and one of them up on the, in the middle of the screen on the right is Coggeshall Ave, which we took a step further, took that hot spot, that cluster of bad main breaks, and put it into our current year project, which is right here. So we're gonna relay that pipe because it broke so many times, and it will probably break again. So spatial relationships. How do things that essentially near each other interact, or how are they going to interact? So one of the big things that Laura was working on was making a network, a geometric network, where one thing, say a valve, knows what happens to other either accounts or water mains when we essentially turn that valve off, because we built that into the network. So that's a big thing that we're working on as far as identifying customers. So a lot of the customer impact maps that we see, that's all through a spatial relationship, because there's in the specific area of, in a lot of cases, work that's going on, new mains that are being laid or rehabilitated. So here we have a representation of low pressure calls, water quality calls, and main breaks. And it's a lot of information, but we can then dive into, you know, what's the triggers? What needs to be fixed? Are these associated with one particular thing? Unfortunately, I mean, I like to geek out on data, so I can have Laura overlay a contour of this, and what we'll see right here is this cluster. It's all associated with people being up on a hill. So all of these calls, complaints, it's an elevation thing, and a lot of this gets captured in the expansion of the high service system. I lost my mouse. So yeah, right in here. But you can, it didn't play well on the PowerPoint, so we'll leave it at this. But that's where this can go, is really honing in, layering in all those data sources so that we can identify the true problem. And again, this is just more analysis. You know, what are the issues? Is it a systemic issue? Is it, are we operating a pump the wrong way? Is it inducing pressure, hammers into the pipeline? Is there a really dirty water main? Is there a water main that's really reached its end of life? Does it need to be replaced? These are all things we can do through this system. But then other times, you get maybe a standalone water quality call. No real relationship. So Is it somebody that's new to the area and they're just not used to the pressure? We do have lower pressure here. Do they have a problem with their premise plumbing, which is a lot of times the case? The hot water tanks kind of getting stirred up and they're getting odors or color from that. So that's why we track it all, so that we know if it's a standalone issue or if it's part of a larger issue. So all those attributes, they are there, so we can look at them, we can know about them, and we can do something about them. Here, this is the background. This is what that data looks like behind the scene. This is a table of all the data. So every year we try to go out and improve the hydrants, either reactively, as we identify them in the flushing program, where we physically touch all the hydrants, and either they are identified as having an issue, or they have an issue through the process, and we fix those. But otherwise, we want to get out there proactively and improve the system as well. So we look at either issues identified on work orders, or simply here, this is just an analysis based on age. And we can find all the old ones, and then we can start to pick away at them. And then the beauty, obviously, a picture's worth 1,000 words. This goes out to the public, and you can easily see where, how this impacts you. Where's my house in relation to this? Where's my commute in relation to this work? These are great tools. We try to incorporate them in all our public notices, and I hope they're well received out in the public. But so you must say they really help communicate out to the public.
I think they definitely improve our mailers that we send out to people when they can see a map of the projects.
So what are some other ways we use GIS? Now these are 2 submissions we put into a grant package for the Kickamuit dams. But again, it goes to that layering. So the image on the left, URI has done this. This is not data we created, or we're just representing that data. But essentially, it's the one on the left specifically is 3 different data sources that we've now merged into one map. And that, again, is that layering effect where we're representing all of that data, 1 foot of sea level rise, 3 feet of sea level rise, and 5 feet of sea level rise, and its impacts to marsh migration in one image. And that's a really powerful tool. I mean, it's probably 10 pages of text in one picture. So it's really helpful. And then from the same source, we're getting wetlands in the area of the Kickamuit Dam. And again, it's 2 data sources on that one. And we're layering them in as a means to communicate the impacts. So the other thing that we're advancing, so we've incorporated maps printed into our public notices, but we're also getting more public information out on our website. So if you ever go to our website, there's a map room. You can search it and you can get to it through these headings here. But otherwise, these are interactive maps. You can search. You search your address. The one on the right is simply just hydrants all throughout the system, and you can see how they relate to either your property or any area of interest. The one on the left, lead services, this is going to be a requirement of the upcoming, soon to be revised rather, lead and copper rule. So we get out in front of it. We have all the data, so we really took the opportunity to take a deep dive into this and get out in front of it. What essentially this is all of our services in the system broken down by the material of construction of the service, so that people can search their property and see what their service line is made of. Now, we don't have a lot, but some systems out in our area have significant amounts of lead going from the water main to the home. And the intent is to communicate to the homeowner so that they know, because in some areas people just don't know what's around them. So, but this tool exists. You can go to it, you can search your address, and you'll see a BCWA material of construction and a customer side material of construction. And then, yeah, our customer service staff knows about this, so if calls come in to verify, everybody's familiar with it. So we had actually a great internal luncheon where we kind of went over all these communication tools. And then where are we going to go from here? So we're already doing the maps for construction. We also want to track some data behind the construction projects, which we can do through the GIS system. So we'll see more mapping, and again, go into that data. We're going to improve the elements, the computerized maintenance system, to get more data into that big bucket of data that we can then report on, trend, and we'll use GIS as a lot of the means for that, because the analysis through a map is a lot easier than looking at 400 lines of Excel. So it's a great tool. And then we're going to go improve that mobile aspect and get more data on every time we're out there versus separate truck rolls and stuff like that. We want to really make the most out of every time we go out in the field. So that sums it up.
Job.
Is this system smart enough to recommend, say, 10 top priority projects to be considered where a company? Is that smart?
So that dovetails into another software solution, which would be asset management. So that's when we start quantifying the consequence of failure, the cost of failure, into some of these attributes. Again, this would be the backbone of that solution as well. But
so that would be another level, another step?
Yes. So it's either an improvement into that elements program or something that would kind of dovetail into it. But again, it would need that registry, which the GIS system would be.
This is really sophisticated. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pretty neat system.
Yes, a very powerful tool, yes.
Very sophisticated. Probably more than 15 years ago, when I was working in Massachusetts, we set up if a fire department going to a commercial establishment, right away they put the location in, and up on the screen on the laptop they could see where the map of the building, they could see where the hazardous material was.
Oh wow.
Prior to that, they had to have all the plans and carry them and all that, but they could get it on the computer. And when the police were going, we had a layer from the police to all the parcels. So if you were a policeman is called to a house, right away, do they have a dog? What kind? Do they have a gun? Have there been any other incidences at that household in the past? So on the way to that location, the policemen who were responding had an understanding of what they were getting into.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is very sophisticated. And that was very early. All we had was the parcel map. And that was all we had to work with.
Yeah.
But we put all those layers back to the property. In fact, we were working with the zoning board, zoning board. We put in all of the decisions of the zoning board. So if you wanted, you moved into a neighborhood, you want to put a shed up or you want to do something, you could go on the map and see where around you have zoning variances been granted. And then you could know, well, they're not giving them out, so you wouldn't waste your time. Or they've been giving them out, and therefore I'm likely to get my variance, so I can make my application. Yeah. And on the other side, it helped the zoning board members because they could see what they had done in the past in a particular area, you know, parcel to parcel. And again, it was just partial. You're far more sophisticated. But that was, we didn't have the fancy stuff, but it worked like a charm.
Yeah, it's a great way to archive data, because how long would it take to flush out all those zoning issues, and then you have them all in one view.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's pretty crazy.
That was good. Anyway, thank you.
Great. A couple of years ago, I asked you, as we know where all the hydrants are now, and we do the flush every year, do you do in the summer hire to paint hydrants?
We do advertise.
We have that out in the papers now.
Well, the reason I ask is that if we know so much about the system, hydrants should be painted according to their pressure and volume.
Unfortunately, we haven't had a very good response on summer help. Last year, I don't think we had any response last year. It's been a few years.
I'd like to see, even if I'm the GIS, if that's possible.
It's something we can look at, yeah.
To look at the different, there's like 4 different values that could be put on it per the volume relative to the thing. Like in Bristol, they're now looking down Hope Street or Thames Street. They throw in that whole thing. I know you did your whole, when Tourister changed over.
Yeah.
You know, your whole model had to change relative to that. So Bristol's going to be forced with the same thing. So we could start looking down that path and say, these are the hydrants that I'd go to. You know.
Yeah.
Give the officer and the driver on the truck, here's a good hydrant, get it.
It's something we can definitely look at in how to quantify that information, and I mean, ideally, and share it in some sort of electronic format. But
it should go, when you do the testing of the things, you get your flow and your pressures, the gauge. Right?
Yeah.
And so you know from hydrant, as you do it annually, especially if it's going to drop off too, because of some usage.
Yeah.
That was good.
Thank you. Okay. Notice of violation.
Pictures of it.
Number 14, is this a new one?
Nope. It's the last time you're gonna see it on this,
It's resolved.
Resolved.
settlement, release signed, closing letter issued today. We're over.
This was the $8,000.
$8,000, a lot of effort for, I don't know what the whole issue was to begin with, but.
Instead of 25,000, right?
Right, well, it saved us 25,000, but even the initial notice of violation to begin with is, but behind us.
So we're done.
Excellent.
Great job, Joe.
We're going into executive session. Will there be any action when we come out of executive session? None? Okay. So entertain a motion. This is litigation. This is the North Arm, Rhode Island General Law 42465A2. Disposition of our property 42465A5, and deal with the minutes in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, we raise our hands, and it is 6:15. We'll take a 2-minute break. Camera is on. We have now returned from executive session. It's 6:40. Entertain a motion to seal the
Make a motion in executive minutes.
seal the minutes of the executive session, right?
So,
Yes. A second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, raise your hand. And now, with no other business before us, our next meeting is the 26th, which is a combination. That's the annual meeting and then a board meeting. Motion to dissolve our current meeting.
So
So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.